Sometimes obedience to God doesn't come with clarity, it comes with the step of faith. Today, I'm interviewing Charisse Smith, an attorney who left a successful legal position to start her own law firm after sensing God leading her to do so, despite having no knowledge or resources. Through faith and obedience, God provided throughout the process and helped her grow as a leader. I can't wait for you to hear what it looked like for her to follow God when He interrupted what she thought was her own path to success. Therese, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited for this conversation. And today, I really want to explore what obedience actually looks like when God calls you into something new. So let's just start from the beginning. And just so you guys know, one of the things about the way I do interviews is I love asking questions, obviously, but I like taking notes. So I'm going to be taking notes and referring to my own notes as we have this conversation. Therese, is that okay with you?
That's fine.
All right, so let's start here. So let's just start with question one. What originally led you into law? And at the time, how did you feel that you defined success?
Okay. What led me into law was I was in the Air Force, and the job that I was assigned originally was in the medical field. Well, it wasn't suited for me. I didn't like it. I was making teeth for Air Force members. Yeah.
Oh, got it.
So it was really kind of boring, not a lot of interaction with the public or people. I was in a warehouse, basically fabricating these dentures, and
That sounds boring.
it was very boring. And so, fortunately for me, the Air Force has something called cross training, where you could cross train into another field. And I happened to luck upon the field of paralegal in the judge
Okay.
advocate department. So my next assignment was to learn to become a paralegal for the judge advocate. I thrived at it. I loved what I did, working with the attorneys, and just everything about what I was doing was intriguing to me. Many of the attorneys that I worked with encouraged me to go to law school. They said, you could do this. You don't need to stay a paralegal. You should go to law school and come back as a judge advocate and work in the Air Force as an attorney. So
Okay.
I started that way. And, funny story, during this time, I got divorced, and during the divorce process, I put my ex-husband on the stand, and the judge asked me if I was an attorney. I told him no, and he said, "Well, you should be." And
Wow.
that sealed it for me. From then on, I wanted to be an attorney.
Awesome. Well, it's some really cool confirmation. So talk to me about the process of going from paralegal at the Air Force to being going through law school and a full-fledged attorney. Like, what was that process like?
So I started taking classes because I hadn't gone to school at all at this point, other than school and the Air Force basic training, the trainings that you get to learn to do your job. So I learned to be a dental lab tech, and then I learned to be a paralegal, but no actual formal college at all.
Mhm.
So I started taking classes at night, but I was a single mom after having gone through the divorce, and taking one class a semester
Wow.
was daunting, and it seemed like it would take me my whole Air Force career to actually become an attorney. And
Right.
so when I had the opportunity to switch off of active duty and go to school full time, I did, and went into the reserve instead of staying in active duty, and went back to school, started at the community college, went to Chaffee Community College, and then on to Claremont McKenna School here in Southern California. And then from there, I went to USC Law School and got my law degree.
What, like it's hard?
And I had originally intended to go back into the Air Force, but God directed me another path and I got a job with a really good law firm in Southern California, and got offered more money than I had ever even thought of making or dreamed of making in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up taking the job at the firm. Back to your other question, how did I define success back then? I
Mhm.
defined it as making money.
Got it.
So to me,
Understood.
success was all about money back then.
Mhm.
How much money could I make? Um, how quickly could I make it? But over time, I learned that money is fleeting, and
Okay.
it's when success is all about money. It's like the Bible says, you're earning money to put it into a bag of holes,
Mhm.
because you never really make enough to make yourself happy when it's only about the money. You're
Right.
always chasing more because you never have enough.
Right. And
So,
that's
and
good.
that's what that means, putting your earnings into a bag with holes. It's just going to go away.
Yeah. I love that. And then so you were at this firm. Now, when did you sense God leading you to start your own firm? I know you mentioned that wasn't originally part of your plan. So talk to me about, like, walk us through that process and what did stepping out require from you personally?
Hmm. Um, so I was with the firm from started in 1999 all the way through about um, 2009, 10.
Wow.
The housing market started, it tanked. The housing market tanked. And the type of law that I do is dealing with real estate and code enforcement and housing. And so there were some things going on, kind of complicated to describe, but some things going on in my field of law, which would either require me to learn a different type of law and try to go into a different practice of law, or to leave the firm,
Okay.
which, the firm was my security net.
Right.
Like that was my source of income. And so that was tied to what I thought at the time was success, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I really felt pulled that God was calling me to do something different. And um, when I got confirmation of that, is God just started opening doors, right? He just
Okay.
was making a way for me to take these steps to walk on water, so to speak, because it was a
Okay.
very, very scary time. It was either I leave the firm, right? Or I learn another area of law, or the work that I was doing would drain up and I could potentially not have a job. So, kind of no matter which way I went, I was going to have to take some risks,
Yeah.
right? I was going to have to do something different. Um, but God started opening doors, making a way for me to have an office, the furniture that I needed for the office, the computers that I needed for the office. So it was like, how could I say no to walking through doors that God was opening for me, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those specific doors. So you
Mhm.
said that the decision was between potentially a new area of law, leaving and doing your own thing, or just kind of finding another job. Now, what caused you to, or what type of confirmation do you feel that you received that opening up a firm for yourself was the route to take?
Yeah, the confirmation was the the doors that I saw God opening to
Hmm.
make that happen, right? Um, he made it so that I had an office space for 6 months with no rent.
Okay, that's huge.
Huge,
Yeah.
right? um, he made it so that the furniture that I needed for that office space was given to me at no cost.
Okay.
So, like the desk, the chairs, the file cabinets, all of that was there, no cost to me. The computers that I needed to operate, given to me. So, like, these were clear signs of confirmation that God was saying, do this. This is what I have for you. This is the season I'm taking you to, and this is where I want you to go. And you can't ignore signs like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people can, unfortunately. My
You
goal is to
shouldn't.
help them. Correct. Yeah, my goal is to help them actually pay attention to them. And I think the cool part about this is one of the things I typically tell on this podcast is when God calls you to do something in his definition of success, there's a couple of things involved. And one of them is provision and the other is favor. And it
Mm.
sounds like you got both during that season.
Well,
So it's really cool confirmation to hear that that's very consistent when it comes down to it. Now, my next question for you is while you're navigating this, did you feel ready to do this, or were you just really just operating based off of faith?
I was operating completely off of faith. I was
Okay.
not ready at all. I had just come out of a season where I have made some irresponsible financial decisions.
Okay.
Uh, I was in a lot of credit card debt at the time that this was happening. So I couldn't get any type of business loan. I couldn't get a business line of credit. When I was given the choice to kind of start my own firm, I started researching, okay, how do you do this? How do you start a firm, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things was you go to the bank and you tell them that you're starting a firm and you give them all your credentials and you tell them you want a line of credit so that you could operate your firm.
Yeah.
I went to a couple of banks and they said, no way. You're a credit risk. We're not giving you any credit.
Right.
So I had no credit, no way to um, get the funds to start it. So, yeah, it was scary. And, I do have to say that um, not only did I have to step out in faith, and I think this is important to your listeners that are married and have a partner, it was a household decision. I had to speak with my husband. I had to talk to my husband and tell him about this crazy idea of leaving my secured job and bi-monthly paycheck,
Uh-huh.
right? To go start my own firm and collect sometime whenever,
Yeah.
right? I couldn't tell him how much I was going to make. I couldn't tell him what my income would be. I had some thoughts based on how much I was bringing into the firm, but I couldn't give him any guarantees. And he had to be okay with that too. And he had to bless that as the head of my household. So
So what was his reply?
his reply was, if you believe God is leading you to do this, then you got to do it.
I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fantastic reply. Now, how would and you kind of just mentioned part of it, obviously speaking with your husband and getting that confirmation. But
Mhm.
how did you move forward while you were so unsure? Like what did your day-to-day was it prayer life? Was it worship? Was it just I'm just going to do it because I'm supposed to do it? Like what did you do to kind of continue to walk regardless of the fear just operating off of faith?
Prayed for
Okay.
sure. Um, I knew I heard confirmation from God that um, we had conversations, right? And um, one of those conversations was about tithing. God
Mhm.
said, I'm going to bless you, but in turn, I want a tenth from the top.
Mm.
And I know for some businesses that's uncommon. You pay your tithes after all of your expenses are paid. But God told me specifically, it's not necessarily for everybody, but He told me specifically, tithe off the top. So that's whatever income comes into the firm before you pay your employees, before you pay yourself, before you pay the taxes, before you
Yeah.
pay your rent. Whenever, my rent was only paid for 6 months, so eventually had to start paying rent.
Yeah.
um, he said, I'm blessing you to come into this season, but I want the tithe off the top.
Awesome.
And you know my firm and my business was blessed from that and successful from that. And I think, during that season, he started teaching me what true success was.
Okay. But
So,
I love that. Now, and we'll talk about that a little more in detail in a little bit, but let's
mhm.
talk about the business growth. I mean, this is a leadership podcast, and a lot of people that are on here are leaders in the marketplace, entrepreneurs, even people that have started planted churches, leaders in churches. So I want to talk about the timeline of when you started. It was just you. I know you ended up with employees and what that looked like. So talk to me a little bit about the timeline and what that leadership adjustment was like.
Okay. So initially, yes, it was just me and my aunt.
Okay.
So she walked into it with me from the very beginning. My aunt was helping her husband, who had been a solo practitioner, running his own law firm. Solo practitioner meaning he never had any employees or anything. He just practiced on his own
Mhm.
and, with her help administratively. And he was retired at the time, and she was semi retired too. She wasn't working. And so I said, "Hey, I need your help. Come over here, help me set this up." Like, I know this may sound weird, but at the time, in my career as a paralegal, I didn't do administrative stuff. We
Mhm.
had others that did, administrative stuff. I did some administrative stuff, but it was things that were different from civilian life type of administrative stuff. And at the firm from 1999 to 2010, I had secretaries do all of the administrative stuff. So little things like mailing things certified, I didn't know what to do with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I had to have some help from somebody who knew things administratively. And so my aunt did that. Um, Shortly after, working for about 3 to 4 months, I realized we're going to need more help.
Okay.
So I pulled in my daughter, who was living in Atlanta at the time. And so I said, "Hey, I need you to come back home. I really need your help. I can give you a salary, give you some pay, but you need to come home and help me out." So she did, and she learned administrative stuff and worked for me. Um, Within about a year of opening my firm, I needed more attorney help. So
Okay.
I ended up hiring an attorney and working with her for a while. Um, and then um, she left, and I hired another attorney, and then I hired a paralegal, and I hired another assistant. So I really had about office of 5 people, 2 attorneys and 3 assistants.
Okay.
And so that was the entry into managing people,
Yeah.
which leadership is all about managing people, right?
Correct. Which is why my next question is, what would you say is one of the hardest leadership lessons you learned while building your business and managing people?
Managing people. Now, the hardest lesson is really learning. I'm a type A personality, as many
Mhm.
leaders are.
Yeah.
And as a type A personality, we like to be in control.
Mhm.
Learning that you can't control people is probably the hardest lesson. You can't control people.
Yeah.
People are going to be people, right?
Yeah.
Um, you can lead them and you can try to guide them, but you cannot control them.
I love it. Okay. And that's something I haven't even covered on our podcast yet, but we're going to talk about that in a lot of detail. So I'm glad you're giving everyone a preview of that.
Okay.
And for me, it's funny because while I lead teams, I also have kids. And I realize it's funny because, and I don't know if you've experienced this yourself when it comes down to kids, but everybody always says, when I have kids, I want my family, they're going to look like this, my kids are going to do this. And this is how we designed everything. And then you realize when the kid pops out, they come pre-built with their own individual personality, and they're going to do whatever is in their heart to do, no matter how much you want them to do something else. So I feel, I mean, it's the same thing with growing up with adults and obviously leading them, but it's funny because it's the same thing no matter what. So I resonate with you when it comes down to that. So let me ask this question. So, what did that season teach you about trusting God versus trusting in your credentials or your preparation?
I don't think that any of the credentials that I have, and as I said, I went to USC Law School. Law school doesn't teach you how to operate a firm, right? It teaches you how to become a lawyer.
Hmm.
Becoming a lawyer and operating a law firm are two different things,
Yeah.
right? And so I really had to lean on God for provision and for wisdom, right? I had to learn, um, you know, as Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, I had to lean on the Lord.
Yeah.
I had to trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not onto my understanding
That's it. Yeah.
because I didn't have an understanding of how to run a law firm. I had an understanding of how to practice law.
Yeah.
And I really felt in that season he was saying, trust me. And so I
And,
had to.
and it's really interesting seeing someone like yourself go from never desiring to be a quote unquote leader and have a business or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, over a course of a small amount of years, having a law firm of 5 employees that are relying on you to pay their bills and take care of their individual families and things
Right.
like that. But the cool thing about it, especially when you're doing things under God's provision, is that He takes care of all of it, and it allows you to kind of focus on the things that you're supposed to focus on. Now, curious, this one's going to be a question that I'm curious about. So one of the things I always tell people is no matter what you do, you should have a purpose beyond it, that is resonating with your gifts and things that you're given and serving others. Obviously you had your firm and your focus is to be able to do your job well, but would you say that there was some type of purpose or service beneath it that you felt compelled to do when it came down to either communicating with people, your employees, or anything, when it comes down to the career overall?
Yeah. So the career overall for me is serving my clients, right?
Hmm.
So leading the people that I had in the firm, everything was about serving the client. So everything was about not only serving the client, but serving the client well, right? My job as the as an attorney, and then as an attorney leading my law firm, is all about the client and making sure that we are um, giving good advice to the client and making sure that they are taken care of and that they don't fall into legal traps and legal trouble. So, um, I don't know if that answers your question,
It
but for
does.
me, it was what drove me and the purpose behind my practice today and then is serving the clients and serving them with integrity and
Mhm.
serving them because
Well,
that's what God has called me to do.
I call leaders servants. So that puts it really well. And obviously you didn't know that initially. But so my next question is, because a lot of leaders keep their business and their faith separate, right? When they go to work, it's 100% work. When they go to church, it's 100% church. Is there anything that you've done in your career to kind of combine faith and business together, or did you kind of keep them separate yourself?
You can't keep them separate. How can you separate who you are?
Hmm.
You can't keep them separate. They have to be intertwined. Now, do I go to work and proselytize and preach to everyone? No, I don't.
Hmm.
That's not how I live my life. But you 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 can't separate who you are. I am a Christian,
Hmm.
and I am undeniably a Christian. So, you know, there have been times where I've prayed with people in the workplace who need prayer. And if that gets me into trouble. It never has. But if it gets me into trouble, it gets me into trouble.
Yeah.
You know, there have been times when I have gone up to a person that God has strongly urged me to let him know that he loves them and just said, "Hey, I just want you to know God loves you." Simple as that. I don't have to preach to them or anything, but I don't think you can separate your Christianity from your business because it's who you are.
Good. I love it. And now let's transition a little bit. So obviously, you eventually transition from having a firm to actually even going back to the firm you originally worked for. Talk to me about how did you discern it was time to kind of leave that dynamic behind and transition into something new? Because I think sometimes everybody's like, "Well, I started this business; it's my baby. I have to keep it for as long as it takes, no matter what." Even if God is ushering him into something new, even if it's looks like it's going backwards. So for you, how did you discern that that was the next step to take?
I knew going in that this was that God was calling me into having my own firm for a season. I knew
Okay.
that from the prayer that I had from my early days of 2011 when I first started the firm, that it wasn't going to be forever. When you're a solo practitioner, you have to have a succession plan.
Mhm.
If something were to happen to me, I didn't have any kids that wanted to be attorneys, so I didn't
Okay.
have kids to leave the firm to. Um, I didn't have nieces or nephews that I was training up into law to someday take over the firm. So
Yeah.
it would be irresponsible for me to retire without a succession plan, right?
Okay.
So going back to the firm was always part of my succession plan. I'm 58. I don't plan to practice law forever. There are other things in life that I want to do. Um, I wanted to start traveling and knowing that it would be very difficult to travel and at the same time run a law firm and practice law and
Yeah.
wear all the hats that I needed to wear having a law firm. Um, the timing just seemed right. I always maintained a relationship with people at the firm after I left the firm, so I didn't shut the door to the firm. I maintained those relationships, and I saw that the firm had gone fully remote. So everybody was working remotely if they wanted to, or in the office if they wanted to, a lot of flexibility. And so it just felt like the right time for me to go back and to begin traveling and doing other things with my life besides running a business.
Got it. And then so talk to me about the practical side of what it actually looks like to shut down a firm that you open. Like what were the steps that you took? What did that look like?
Um, it looked like talking to the clients first and foremost,
Right.
letting the clients know, reassuring the clients that I'm still there, that nothing is really going to change with the attorney-client relationship. Um, it did mean there was at least one or two clients that I couldn't take with me just
Mhm.
because of some dynamics. I couldn't transition those clients to the firm, so I had to find other attorneys that I could turn that work over to that the client was comfortable with. It was a at least year to 2-year process. I let my employees know well in advance, about a year and a half before I even started the transition. Hey, you guys are going to have to find other work. I didn't want to leave anyone unemployed or anything like that. So I let them know in plenty of time to get other jobs before shutting down the firm. I kept everyone that, until they found other work or
Okay.
decided they were going to retire. So it took a good year and a half
Okay.
to actually transition and shut down.
Got it. Well, fair enough. Now, considering just kind of everything that you've done in your life when it comes down to leadership and business, looking
Mhm.
back now, what would you say godly success means to you?
Hmm, that's a good question. It's not what I thought it was. To
Okay.
me, godly success means thriving and enjoying a life while serving God's purpose for your life. You can make all the money in the world and not have joy in your life, you know? So success, where it used to be about money, is not about money to me. Success is being able to thrive in what you do, loving what you do, enjoying what you do, enjoying life, and again, living God's purpose for your life, whatever that may be.
Awesome. I love that. Now, as to kind of wrap things up, for
Mhm.
somebody that's listening who feels God's nudging them towards something uncertain, like what would you say to them? What would your advice be to somebody that's in a season where God is nudging them to something that they don't feel that they're prepared for?
Jump off the boat. What are you waiting for?
I love
Like,
it.
nothing's gonna move unless you move, right?
Yeah, that's
That
good.
would be my advice.
And that's fantastic. And then, I mean, you've gone through obviously so many different seasons. Now, I these are the practical the answers I probably already know, but I want the listeners to understand this from somebody who's experienced it. Even with all the provision and everything that you walked through when God was ushering you into starting your own business, was that process simple and easy?
No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah.
It wasn't simple or easy, and there were times so remember I stated I couldn't get a line of credit initially. Eventually, I was able to get a line of credit. By the time I was hiring um, the bulk of my staff, I did have a little bit of income from the business to show the banks that I actually have income and I can pay back these loans. So I did eventually get a line of credit when I started hiring employees. That was important to me. I wanted to make sure that before I hired employees, I could pay them.
Mhm.
Right? So I did eventually was able to get that line of credit so that, on months where the income might have been lower, I could tap into the line of credit to make my payroll.
Okay.
Um, so it wasn't always easy and the income wasn't always flowing. I did have to use the line of credit sometimes and then pay it back and juggle the income around. Um, so it wasn't always easy, but I always knew God was present with me in it.
Mhm.
So um, I wasn't worried. I wasn't concerned that, the ship was going to sink. It was, I know He's with me and we've got this. So
And I know you mentioned prayer earlier. Was there anything else practically you did in those seasons where it was like not exactly what you wanted to happen, you had to take that line of credit and things like that? Was anything else that you did that helped you kind of navigate that process without having to be anxious or worried or have fear or anything like that?
I had to rely on my team.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to rely on my team because I couldn't do it by myself, right? So as a leader, you don't just lead yourself, right? You're leading people, and you hired people, or you have these people on your team for a reason, right? And so you have to learn to trust your people too. Yeah, not
Yeah.
only are you trusting God for provision, but you have to trust the team that He's blessed you with, or that you've hired, um, to take over some things because you can't do it all.
Love it. And then just to wrap things up, and then because we are done, I respect
Mhm.
your time. I know you have things to do. I know you're an attorney. Is there kind of any parting words you would want to potentially give for our listeners? Anything that people, again, that are kind of following God and growing in their leadership and wanting to do it the right way? Is there anything that you would potentially want to leave them?
The right way is God's way. Right? But how do you know that, right? It is reading his word, it is diving in, it is prayer, it's all of those things. But um, you know, you're not going to be able to lead if you don't take risks, right? Leaders um, are people who take risks. You can't just stay in the valley. Our pastor likes to say, um, everything worthwhile is uphill. He points up.
Mm,
Um, and that is so true. You can't lead, you can't go where God is taking you by staying in the valley.
yeah,
You have to go uphill. You
love it.
have to make the climb. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the effort.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking
Hurts.
out the time to do this. I appreciate it. My listeners do as well. Wish you the absolute best. And considering what might happen, in the future with your life, I might have you back on here. So we'll see. But thank you so much again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.